It was past midnight. The parking garage was dead silent, except for one sound, a sound she was never supposed to hear. Amelia Hayes had everything: a six-figure salary, a luxury apartment overlooking Central Park, a charming, successful husband. From the outside, her life looked like a dream other people pinned to their vision boards. But in the cold, dim light of that underground garage, one moment shattered 7 years of marriage and ignited something inside her that no one could have predicted. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't run. She locked the car doors and turned the heat up to 104 degrees. What followed wasn't just revenge. It was a masterclass in silence, patience, and calculated power. One move at a time, she dismantled everything her husband had built: his career, his reputation, his freedom, while wearing a smile so composed no one suspected a thing. This is the story of a woman who refused to be a victim, who chose to be the architect of her own justice, and who paid a price no one talks about: the cost of becoming someone you no longer recognize. The greatest battles aren't fought with anger. They're won with patience, precision, and the quiet courage to know your own worth. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment. We read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join our community. New stories every week, crafted just for you. This content was carefully researched, built, and manually edited by our team, with the purpose of bringing you meaning, reflection, and real lessons from life.
It was after midnight when I finally got home, another soul-crushing day in the books. Down in the garage, I heard it, these frantic, muffled gasps. It was my husband, Alex, in his Porsche with some woman from his office. Without a second thought, I turned, raised my key fob, and pressed the lock button. Then I set the car's internal climate control to 104 degrees. At 10 o'clock this morning, my mother-in-law started hammering on the front door like a madwoman. I just smiled. Last night, the clock had ticked past 11:30 when I finally powered down my laptop. The screen glowed with the quarterly report I was supposed to have finalized. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The only noise in the whole office was the low drone of the servers and the tired thumping of my own heart. Through the window, Manhattan's lights smeared against the fog, a brilliant, blurry mess. Beautiful, but so damn lonely. It was my 7th straight night of overtime, all for some monster of an M&A deal. Our whole department was wound tight, running on fumes and not allowed to stop. I'm Amelia Hayes, 32 years old, head of marketing at a multinational. To the outside world, I'm the cliché, the career woman in designer shoes, climbing the corporate ladder without a hair out of place. I make great money, live in a sprawling co-op on the Upper East Side, and drive a tasteful Volvo S90. My husband, Alex Vance, is a partner at a top architectural firm. Charming, talented, the whole package. We have a 5-year-old son, Ethan. On paper, we are that couple, the one everyone secretly resents. A storybook marriage, a picture-perfect family, but I'm the only one who sees the hairline fractures running under the glossy surface. The conversations Alex and I used to have, the ones that lasted all night in college, have shrunk to curt exchanges about Ethan's schoolwork or whose turn it is to take out the recycling. The affection was still there, technically, but it felt like a gesture, a habit he hadn't broken yet. There was this invisible barrier between us. We could see each other just fine, but we couldn't reach through. I'd gotten used to the quiet lie of it all, figuring this was just what marriage eventually became. My phone buzzed. It was a FaceTime call from Ethan, his little face filling the screen, eyes drooping with sleep. He was hugging his stuffed T-Rex and mumbled, "Mommy, when are you coming home? I had a dream you read me a story." My heart just broke open. All the exhaustion evaporated in that one sentence. "So soon, baby. Mommy has one more tiny thing to do and then I'll be home. You be good for Grandma, okay?" After we hung up, I threw my stuff into my tote and headed for the elevator. The building was dead silent, a corporate tomb. The harsh fluorescent light stretched my shadow into a long, distorted figure on the polished floor. The second I was in the driver's seat with the engine running, I felt the mask come off. I could stop being the boss, the machine, and just be me. The stereo drifted into Debussy's Clair de Lune, and the music felt like it was smoothing out the knots in my brain from the last week. I pulled out into the light late-night traffic. The windshield wipers swished back and forth, a steady rhythm clearing the drizzle, like they were trying to wipe away my own anxieties. The drive home felt longer than usual. Images flashed in my mind. Ethan's grin, the warm glow of our apartment, and Alex's face. A face I once adored that now felt like a stranger's. When was the last time we'd actually sat and eaten a meal together, just us? I honestly couldn't remember. When did we last hold each other and mean it? It felt like a lifetime ago. A wave of profound emptiness rolled over me. I had everything anyone could ever want, and I was looking for something, anything, real to fill a void I didn't even know was there. The truth was, I felt like a ghost haunting my own gilded cage. My car rolled into the underground garage, the sound of the tires a soft whisper on the concrete floor. The yellow sensor lights flickered on as I passed, then blinked off behind me, as if the darkness was swallowing me whole. My spot is in the back corner of Section B, kind of isolated. I just parked and killed the engine when a weird noise cut through the silence. It was quiet, but in that dead air it was impossible to miss. For a second, I thought I was imagining things, or maybe someone was just on their phone in the car next to me. I paused, listening harder. The sound kept going, getting clearer. It was breathing, heavy, desperate. A woman's short, sharp moans mixed with the rough, steady panting of a man. The sound was just wet, a slick, desperate noise that was all raw, animal need. It wrapped around my heart like a freezing coil, and my entire body locked up. My first thought wasn't even betrayal, it was just disgust. Who does that here? In a public garage where anyone could walk past making noises that shameless. I glanced around instinctively. The cars were just dark, hulking shapes in the dim light, like sleeping beasts. The sickly green glow of the emergency exit sign wasn't comforting. It just made everything feel more claustrophobic. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Blood roared in my ears and then turned to slush. The sounds were coming from somewhere terrifyingly close. And then a horrible certainty sliced through the confusion. The noise was coming from 3 spots down, from my husband Alex's car, a black Porsche Macan, the trophy he bought himself last year when he made partner. It was our single most expensive possession after the apartment. A man's car should reflect his station, he'd always say. No, I thought, shaking my head, trying to push the idea away. It can't be. He told me he had a big client dinner tonight, that he'd be late. I was so buried in my report I didn't even ask for details. Was he just getting home, or was this a detour? And then a name surfaced. His junior colleague, Chloe Miller. The name was like a needle prick to the heart. She was a new designer at his firm, young, gorgeous, the kind of woman who radiates energy without even trying. Alex had brought her to a couple of work events, always introducing her with a proud little flourish as his talented right-hand woman. I'd seen them in his office once, huddled over some blueprints. The way Chloe looked at him was pure adoration. And Alex, he had this look on his face, this confident king-of-the-world expression I hadn't seen him wear in years. At the time, I brushed it off, happy he seemed so energized by his work again. Looking back now, that wasn't just professional admiration in her eyes. My palms started to sweat. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. A little voice in my head screamed at me to just go, to drive away, go upstairs and pretend I heard nothing. Go back to being the good wife, the perfect mother who doesn't see. But I couldn't move. The sounds from that car were like a physical force, pulling me forward, demanding I see the truth I already knew. I slipped out of my car, my heels making a soft, sharp click on the concrete that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I held my breath, taking one slow step after another toward his Porsche. Each step felt like I was walking on shattered glass. The closer I got, the more sickeningly clear the sounds became. Her moans were a performance, and his grunts were pure possession. They were in his car, parked right next to where I park every single day, playing out this cheap, dirty scene. And a cold, clean rage I'd never felt before, ignited in my chest. It wasn't that I never thought Alex could cheat. It was that I never believed our story, our life together, could end up this pathetic. We'd pulled all-nighters in the library, shared instant ramen in a tiny apartment. We promised we'd build something real. All of those memories were now turning into razors, methodically slicing away at my pride. I ducked behind a thick concrete support pillar, using the shadow to hide. It was his black Porsche, no doubt about it. The windows were tinted dark, but the car was rocking with a slight, unmistakable rhythm. That and the sounds seeping out told me everything I needed to know. I just stared at the car, and my mind went completely silent. All the pain and confusion burned away, leaving behind a single clarifying point of fury: model. The passenger door was cracked open. A single leg sheathed in black nylon dangled out, lifeless. Its stiletto lay on the filthy garage floor next to the tire. The image was a gut punch, like a single grotesque frame from some cheap porno. Chloe. It had to be her. And Alex. My lungs seized. My chest felt like it was cracking, and the taste of metal filled my throat. I had a primal urge to sprint over there, to beat my fists against the glass, to drag them into the light and expose their filth. I wanted to tear them apart for their shamelessness. But a different voice cut through the rage, quiet, cold, and absolutely terrifying. Get a grip, Amelia. Storming over there makes you the hysterical wife in their sordid drama. A messy divorce, a fight for assets, a broken home for Ethan, and public humiliation for our parents. No. Impulse was a trap. I didn't want a moment of release. I wanted total victory, a revenge so complete they would never get up again. Yes, revenge. The word took root in my heart, a parasitic vine that gave me a sick, exhilarating warmth. They burned down my life so I would make them pay for every single ash 1,000 times over. I'd let them have their disgusting little triumph, and then I would push them into the abyss. My gaze drifted from Alex's Porsche, that shrine to his ego, to my own handbag on the passenger seat. It was open. I saw the spare smart key, small and black. A wild, perfect plan clicked into place. A cold smile I didn't recognize stretched my lips. If you love playing in the car that much, I thought, I'll give you a ride you'll never forget. I took one sharp, steadying breath and slipped back to my Volvo, sliding behind the wheel without a sound. I didn't start the engine. My hand found the key fob in my purse. The plastic felt cool, but it seared my palm like a brand. I stared at the Porsche, my gaze feeling like a physical weight. I glanced down and used my thumbnail to press a small recessed button on the key. It was a custom security feature I'd had installed, a malicious little tool I never thought I'd actually use. A complete remote override for the locks and climate control. As long as I had a signal, this key gave me total command. It let me lock the doors, seal the windows, and crank the internal heat to 104 degrees, effectively turning the car into a mobile sauna. It was designed as an anti-theft measure, a way to trap a thief or immobilize the engine. I never dreamed it would become my instrument of revenge. My finger trembled just slightly above the tiny red button. One press, and that Porsche would become an airtight oven. On a cold New York autumn night, the sudden heat would be agonizing for two people in light clothing. In less than 30 minutes, they'd be deep into heat stroke, disoriented from dehydration, and in genuine mortal danger. They would go from a moment of cheap pleasure to absolute terror. The thought sent a shiver through me, not of fear, but of the dark, intoxicating power of holding their fates in my hand. I could already see the panic that would shatter Alex's composed, handsome face, and that vapid Chloe would just be a screaming, crying disaster. Sometimes justice requires a devil's touch. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them, all emotion was gone. Only ice remained. Without hesitation, my thumb pressed the button. A soft electronic beep cut the silence. In the quiet garage, it sounded like the starting gun for my revenge. After it was done, I dropped the key back into my purse, smoothed my hair, and straightened my shirt, erasing any trace of what I'd done. Then I got out and walked with a perfectly even stride toward the elevator lobby. My face was a blank mask, but inside, my heart was a wasteland, scoured by a storm of absolute triumph. As I rode the elevator up, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls and felt a jolt of unfamiliarity. Was that really me? Not the cool Amelia from work or the patient wife at home? Maybe everyone has a monster caged inside them by civility and morals, and tonight, Alex had just unlocked the door to mine. When I got to our apartment, the living room light was on. His mother, Margaret, was dozing on the sofa, the television droning on with some noisy late-night show. The click of the front door made her jump awake. She saw me and gave me her usual smile, laced with a familiar note of complaint. "Oh, you're home. Ethan's been asleep for hours. Working late again?" "Had to, Margaret. A last-minute crisis," I replied calmly, kicking off my shoes as if I were discussing the weather. "You can't burn yourself out," she chided, getting to her feet. "Is Alex not back with you?" The question was a tiny needle stabbing into a freshly sealed wound. I met her searching gaze and answered evenly, "His dinner must be running late. I didn't check." Margaret just hummed, her eyes studying my face. She could tell something was wrong but couldn't name it. "It's getting so late," she muttered, mostly to herself as she shuffled off to her room. I went into Ethan's bedroom. He was sound asleep, his face flushed, his long lashes resting on his cheeks. I sat on the edge of his bed, just watching him, my hand gently stroking his hair. The tears finally came, silent and hot, but they weren't tears of sadness. It was a much more complex cocktail of emotions. My poor, sweet boy. He had no idea. Soon his world would be shattered, and his mother would be someone consumed by pure hatred. But I didn't regret it. If our marriage was a lie, I'd rather burn it down myself than let it slowly rot. I wiped my tears away, took out my phone, and opened the car's remote monitoring app. The screen showed the Porsche's live status in Section B of the garage. Doors, locked. Windows, sealed. The internal temperature was climbing steadily from its initial 64 degrees. The punishment protocol was officially active. I leaned back against the headboard. For the first time in a long time in this apartment, I felt a powerful sense of control. Rain streaked down the window panes, but I knew a far more vicious storm was brewing inside that sealed Porsche, and I was its director and sole audience. 1 a.m., a time when everyone should be asleep. I heard the first loud bang on the door. No, that wasn't a knock. It was the sound of someone trying to break down the door. It was rough, frantic, and filled with a hysterical fury. It was my mother-in-law. Her piercing voice drilled through the wood. "Amelia! Amelia, you get out here this instant! You witch! What in God's name did you do to my son?" I slowly got out of bed and walked to the door. Standing on my side of the thick wood, I listened to her shrieking curses and the heavy thuds of her fists. A cold, sharp smile bloomed on my face. I almost laughed. The real show was just beginning. "Amelia, open this door, you vicious woman. Tell me what you did to Alex. Open this door right now." My mother-in-law's screams mixed with the relentless pounding, a chaotic symphony that finally shattered any pretense of peace in our home. She was no longer just a nagging old woman. She was an enraged lioness, pouring every ounce of her fear and fury into saving her son. I stood motionless behind the door, my breathing even and slow. That cold smile was still plastered on my face. In the dim light of the hallway, I'm sure I looked like a monster. I had no intention of opening the door. Instead, I went and poured myself a glass of water, sipping it slowly, as if the drama outside had nothing to do with me. I went back to the living room and sat on the sofa. An old picture book of Ethan's was lying on the coffee table. The cover showed a smiling family holding hands, running in the sun. The irony was suffocating. I once believed that could be our future. Now I saw it was nothing more than a self-deceiving fantasy. Her assault on the door continued for nearly 10 minutes, punctuated by a string of curses aimed at me. "Damn you, you evil jinx! If anything happens to my boy, I will haunt you from my grave." Her voice was raw and sharp, filled with an ignorant, stubborn fury. Her insults, far from angering me, gave me a sick, twisted sense of pleasure. "See, Alex, even your own mother will defend you like this before she knows any of the facts. But she has no idea. The perfect, obedient son she's screaming about is currently paying a terrible price for the thrill of his betrayal inside a steadily heating car." Then there was an enormous bang. The doorframe itself seemed to shake violently. It sounded like she had rammed it with her shoulder, a 60-year-old woman finding a surprising primal strength for her son. A moment later, I heard her fumbling around, then the sound of her dialing her phone. "Hello? Is this building management? You need to send someone up here right now. My son is trapped in the garage. He's locked in, please. You have to hurry." Her voice, I imagine, is a raw scream over the phone, tearing through the quiet night. I don't feel a thing. I just glance at my phone, at the smart home app I have open. The numbers on the screen confirm my math. The internal temperature of the Porsche Macan has climbed from a comfortable 64 degrees to 82. In a space that small, it's a subtle heat. If you were just sitting there, you'd think it was a little stuffy, but that's it. But for two people thrashing around, adrenaline pumping through their veins, that creeping warmth wouldn't be a warning. It would just feel like part of the cheap thrill, the heat of their own pathetic passion. I can picture it perfectly. Alex, drunk on the power of his little conquest, and that girl, Chloe, looking up at him with that pathetic, worshipful gaze. They have absolutely no idea that their humid little bubble is becoming a tomb. Their breathing gets faster, sweat soaking through their clothes, and they'll just blame it on desire. I take a slow sip of water, my eyes fixed on the black void outside my penthouse window. The rain stopped an hour ago, but the sky is a blanket of heavy, starless clouds. This city, just like my marriage, looks dazzling from a distance, but up close, it's just rotting from the inside out. Then a buzz. My phone vibrates on the glass coffee table. The screen glows with 2 words, Alex Vance. For a single second, my stomach plummets, a ghost of a feeling. Then it's gone, ice cold. He's calling, right on schedule. I take a controlled breath, swipe the screen, and press the phone to my ear, saying nothing, just listening. First, there's just a low hum, the acoustics of the concrete parking garage. Then I hear Alex's voice, so familiar and yet so alien. All the smooth charm is gone, replaced by a ragged, panicked rasp. "Hello? Hello?" he says, his voice cracking. I stay perfectly still, a statue carved from silence. His breathing gets heavier on the other end of the line, and I can hear Chloe's faint whining mixed in. "Alex, it's so hot. I can't breathe. Just hang on, okay? It's going to be fine," Alex says, his voice strained. He's trying to sound reassuring, but the desperation is bleeding through every word. A man interrupted during a moment like that should be angry, annoyed, but he's not. He sounds desperate, pleading with the dead air. Finally, it's my turn. My voice comes out terrifyingly calm, as smooth and cold as a frozen lake. "Having a good time, Alex?" A dead heavy silence crashes down on the other end. Even Chloe's whimpering cuts off. I can just see them frozen in their sweat-soaked embrace. The look on their faces must be incredible. Shock, confusion, and then pure, undiluted terror as the truth dawns on them. It takes him a few seconds to find his voice again. He swallows his panic, his voice a low growl. "Amelia? Is that you? What did you do to my car?" His car. I let out a small, dry laugh that sounds like crackling ice over the speaker. "You seem to be forgetting, Alex, that Porsche is something you bought for yourself, with your money. It was never ours. As for what I did, I pause, savoring the sound of his ragged breathing. It's simple. I turned your midlife crisis into a convection oven. The temperature should be hitting about 95 degrees by now. What do you think happens if you two stay in there much longer? You're insane, Amelia. You crazy. Alex has completely lost it now, his voice a low growl. Open the damn door. Are you trying to kill us? Kill you? I say, as if he's just told the funniest joke. Alex, you and your little intern were the ones who killed this family. I'm just helping you sweat out the toxins. Think of it as a high-intensity workout. You must be burning a ton of calories. A little dehydration might do you some good. You vicious woman? Chloe finally chokes out, her voice breaking into hysterical sobs. Alex, I can't do this. It's too hot. I want to get out. Shut up, Chloe, Alex snaps before roaring into the phone. Amelia, what the hell do you want? Name your price. I'll give you anything. Just stop this. And there it is. So predictable. He gets caught, and his first instinct isn't remorse. It's a business transaction. In his world, everything has a price tag. The 7 years of my life, the son I gave him, the home I built. What's the going rate for those? Money? My voice is flat, devoid of emotion. Alex, you really overestimate your net worth. Do I look like I need your dirty money? This was never about money. Then what is it about, you psycho? He screams. Fairness, I say, each syllable a perfectly polished stone. You love games, Alex. You love feeling like you're in control. Well, tonight you get to see what it feels like on the other side. You wanted to have your fun in the car, so have it. Enjoy every second. I'm not in any rush. I have all night to play. If you two can manage to crawl out of there alive by morning, then we'll talk. And with that, before he can say another word, I end the call and block his number. For the first time in hours, the room is completely silent. I lean my head back against the sofa, letting out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The weight in my chest feels a little lighter, but I know this isn't over. This was just step one. The bait has been set. The real game is just starting. Sure enough, less than 60 seconds later, my phone rings again. It's an unknown local number this time. I answer, and before I can speak, a frantic man's voice erupts from the speaker. Hello, is this Ms. Amelia Hayes? This is Mr. Henderson from Building Management. We just got an emergency call from a resident. Her son is trapped inside his car. The situation is critical. We think the car's electronic lock system is malfunctioning. Can you please come down and take a look? I almost smile. So fast. My mother-in-law is a clever snake. She didn't call the police. She called management. She knows the police would mean a public spectacle, a stain on the family name. Building staff, on the other hand, are easier to manage. Mr. Henderson, hello, I say, pitching my voice into a tone of breathless panic. Is it my husband's car? He said something felt off with it earlier. He's parked in Section B. I'll be right down. Thank you so much. Yes, Ms. Hayes, please hurry. Our security team is already there. Please just come as fast as you can. I hang up, stand, and let my face fall into a perfect mask of helpless shock. I run to the bedroom, throw on a trench coat, and mess up my hair in the mirror. A few drops of artificial tears to make my eyes red and puffy, and the picture is complete. The entire transformation is seamless, practiced. Years of pitching to hostile boardrooms taught me how to sell an emotion. As I pull open my front door, I nearly collide with my mother-in-law, Margaret, who's fumbling with her own keys, ready to rush downstairs. The second she sees me, her face contorts with rage, and she points a trembling finger at me. You still have the nerve to show your face? If anything happens to my son, I swear to God. I match her energy instantly, letting the fake tears stream down my face. Margaret, calm down. I just got the call from management, too. I don't know what happened to Alex's car either. Let's just go down there now. My performance works, short-circuiting her rage into shared panic. She lets me guide her to the elevator, and we rush down to the garage with the manager and 2 security guards. All the way down, she's muttering, "Hurry, oh God, Alex, please be okay." Her face is a mess of authentic fear and anxiety, her usual domineering presence completely gone. It's funny how fragile people are when faced with a real crisis. When we get to Section B, we can see the black Porsche sitting under the harsh fluorescent lights, looking like a sleek, modern tomb. Yellow tape is already up. "That's the car!" Margaret shrieks, pulling away from me and stumbling forward. "Ma'am, please be careful," the manager says, grabbing her arm. I hang back, watching the scene from a distance. My heart rate is perfectly steady. My eyes are cold. I don't need to get closer. The app on my phone tells me everything I need to know. The internal temperature is now pushing 100 degrees. For two people, lightly dressed and already dehydrated from their activities, that kind of heat is more than just uncomfortable. It's starting to become dangerous. Their breathing is shallow, their hearts are racing, and they are very, very weak. A young security guard finally worked up the nerve, jogging to the driver's side and rapping his knuckles hard against the glass. "Sir? Ma'am? Are you guys okay in there? Can you hear me?" The car was a tomb. He scrambled to the passenger side, banging on the window again, getting nothing back. "This isn't good. Oh, this is really not good." The color drained from his face. "There's no response." Those words detonated the quiet panic simmering in the garage. My mother-in-law's knees buckled and she nearly hit the concrete floor, whispering, "It's over. It's all over. My Alex." I moved in on cue, catching her before she fell, my own voice thick with manufactured tears. "Margaret, don't panic. Maybe they're just asleep, or their phones died. We just need to get the door open," the building manager stammered, twisting his hands. "The spare key fob isn't syncing. The anti-theft on this thing is military grade." "Then do something," my mother-in-law shrieked, grabbing his arm. "Call a locksmith now!" "Ma'am, at this hour? For a high-end electronic lock? A regular guy can't touch this. We'd have to tear the door apart," the manager said, his expression grim. The scene devolved into a mess of useless suggestions and rising hysteria. They were all just scrambling, completely lost. I was the only one standing still, a pocket of calm in their storm. I knew none of their ideas would work. The car was a ghost, completely enslaved to my phone. The locks were mechanical, the climate control my personal plaything. Their entire world of predictable solutions was useless against me. I watched the fear twist Margaret's face, the helplessness on the manager's, and instead of the rush of victory, a profound sadness washed over me. This was the family I'd spent 7 years trying to build, trying to love, and in a real crisis, they weren't a team. They were just scared, ready to point fingers. They hadn't pointed them at me yet. I took a shaky breath, letting my voice crack just right. "Everyone, just breathe. Maybe there's another way. I think Alex mentioned an emergency release, in the trunk, I think, to open the car from the inside." The suggestion landed like a lifeline. 2 guards immediately rushed to the back of the Porsche, prying at the trunk with everything they had. They finally got it open, ripped away the soundproofing felt, and found the little red handle. They yanked it with a grunt. Nothing. The satisfying click of unlocking doors never came. The mechanism was frozen solid. "What the hell?" "It won't budge," one of the guards muttered, mystified. I knew why. The lockdown protocol I'd initiated was absolute. It overrode every system, from the door locks to the central computer, and it even severed the connection to that manual emergency pull. There would be no escape. "This piece of junk!" a guard swore, kicking the tire. That's all it took for Margaret to completely shatter. She dropped to her knees on the filthy garage floor, pounding the concrete. "Alex, wake up! You can't leave me!" Then her head snapped up, her eyes locking on me. "Amelia, you did this. It's all your fault, you bitch. You wanted this." Every head turned. The security guards, the manager. Their suspicion became a palpable thing, pressing in on me from all sides. In their minds, the distraught wife was always the first suspect. I let her scream. I let them stare. The fake tear tracks were still damp on my cheeks, but my eyes were steady. I said nothing. What was the point? Their understanding meant nothing to me. All that mattered was seeing this through. The minutes stretched on, each tick of the clock a lifetime in that car. I could picture it perfectly, their consciousness fading, skin flushing a painful, angry red from the heat, their lips cracking as their bodies were slowly baked dry. That initial grubby lust would have boiled away, replaced by a primal need to breathe, to live. They'd be clawing at the windows, screaming for help no one could hear, their voices swallowed by the soundproofed glass and the concrete walls. And I stood outside, the silent, invisible God pulling their strings. I glanced at my wrist. 1:30 a.m. Exactly 1 hour since I pressed the button. The game was escalating. I could almost hear the gears of fate grinding forward, heavy and final. Margaret's sobs echoed through the garage, a premature funeral dirge for the son she had raised. The manager and his guards just stood there, wiping sweat from their foreheads, a useless audience to the unfolding tragedy. Every few seconds, their eyes would flick back to me, the quiet woman at the center of it all. They looked at me with a mix of fear and rage, as if I really were some kind of monster. I ignored them, pulling out my phone and opening the app. The numbers glowing on the screen made my breath catch. 105 degrees. The internal temperature had blown past my preset limit. They were moving into the critical zone of severe heat stroke. Their bodies were failing. Their core temperatures were climbing uncontrollably. Heat cramps, exhaustion, and then full-blown heat stroke, the kind that liquefies organs, the kind you don't come back from. But I never wanted them dead. Death was too easy, too clean. I didn't want to be a murderer. Murder would just drag me down into the filth with them. No, I wanted a lesson. A punishment so complete it would scour their souls, a blow that would shatter every last piece of their arrogance. And right on cue, as their desperation reached its peak, I heard it, the distant wail of sirens growing closer. The sharp, piercing sound sliced through the suffocating despair. A pair of police cruisers, lights painting the garage in strokes of red and blue, screeched to a halt near the entrance. Doors flew open, and uniformed officers emerged, their faces set and serious as they strode toward us. An older officer was clearly in charge. His gaze took in the whole pathetic scene in a second, landing on the Porsche and my mother-in-law. "Who owns the vehicle? What's the situation?" His voice was loud, clipped, with an authority that silenced everyone. "Officer, my son, he's trapped!" Margaret scrambled to her feet like he was her last hope on earth. "His name is Alex Vance. He's in there and the doors are locked. Please, you have to get him out." The officer gave a curt nod. "We got a call about a person trapped. Vehicle is a black Porsche Macan," he stated, turning to the manager, who quickly rattled off the license plate. "Secure the area. Nobody who isn't essential gets close," the officer ordered. Younger cops moved instantly, unfurling yellow tape, pushing us all back. The lead officer approached the car himself, peering inside before turning to his colleague. "Officer Miller, get the window punch. We're making a forced entry." The air grew even tighter. Seeing the police in action seemed to give Margaret a second wind. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Officer," she yelled, "it was her, Amelia Hayes. She hates my Alex." She threatened him on the phone just today. She was just spinning lies, trying to build a cage for me. I just played my part, the innocent, terrified wife. "No," I cried, shaking my head. "Officer, that's not true. I didn't do anything. I didn't even know something was wrong until management called me." My performance was, I had to admit, flawless. It gave the team leader pause. His sharp eyes darted between me and Margaret, trying to solve the equation. A moment later, Officer Miller returned with a heavy-duty window breaker. He aimed for the driver's side window, reared back, and swung. The tempered glass exploded with a deafening crack. But the door didn't pop open, because it wasn't just the lock I controlled. It was the entire closing mechanism. The door stayed sealed as if it were welded shut. "What the hell?" the team leader muttered, frowning. An officer shoved his arm through the shattered window, fumbling for the interior lock. After a moment, he pulled his arm back, shaking his head in frustration. "All the buttons are dead, sir. Nothing's responding. The entire electronic system is down. Manual override isn't working either. It's like it's being controlled remotely." "Remotely," the officer repeated, the word hanging in the air. He turned slowly, his gaze pinning me to the spot. "Miss Hayes, you know this car. Are there any special remote features I should know about?" The million-dollar question. I immediately slipped into character, playing the part of the clueless, terrified wife, even making my hands tremble a little. "Officer, God, I don't know anything about cars. This is Alex's Porsche. He handles all of it. He did say something a few days ago, I think, about some anti-theft app he installed on his phone. I'd even mocked him for being so paranoid. Could that be it? Did it just malfunction?" My story was thin, but plausible. It established that a remote system existed, but pinned the blame squarely on a technical glitch and Alex's own obsessive tinkering. And by dropping the phrase anti-theft, I planted the perfect seed of doubt that I might have just fumbled with the app myself. It wasn't the truth, obviously, but it was enough to muddy the waters. The sergeant in charge listened, giving me a long, thoughtful nod. He didn't press me further, just keyed his radio. "Dispatch. This is Sergeant Davis at the Section B incident. We've got a confirmed entrapment inside a Porsche Macan. Doors are locked, unknown electrical cause. Our standard entry tools are getting us nowhere. I need a technical team and a network specialist on site. I repeat, requesting tech and network support." Clicking off, he turned to us. "All right, everyone, just stay calm. We're getting professional auto engineers and network guys down here. Right now, getting them out is the priority. We're going to keep trying to breach the vehicle." For the next 30 minutes, a full-on rescue operation unfolded right there in our parking garage. The cops tried everything they had, crowbars, hydraulic shears, but the Porsche was built like a tank. That German engineering was no joke. The door frame was solid steel, and the lockdown I'd initiated was tied directly to the mechanical locks. Every failed attempt sent my mother-in-law spiraling deeper into hysterics, casting a grim pall over the scene. I just stood back, a spectator at my own show, watching my plan unfold flawlessly. The police presence wasn't a complication, it was the perfect alibi, the best cover I could have ever asked for. They were throwing every city resource at this, and their very desperation was the final ingredient. It was the catalyst that would punish Alex and Chloe. The longer this took, the hotter it got in that steel box, and the more profound my revenge would be. Just as everyone's frustration was peaking, my phone buzzed. Same unknown local number. I had a feeling I knew who it was. It was Mr. Henderson, the building manager, again. But this time his voice was tight with panic. "Miss Hayes, we have a massive problem, a really massive problem. We just got an alert. The ventilation system in the B-level garage appears to be down. The main exhaust fans aren't running. We're looking into it, but there's no air circulating down there." A ventilation system malfunction. I almost smiled. You couldn't write it better. Of course, I knew the system hadn't malfunctioned at all. It was working just fine. But this phone call was a gift from the universe. It was the perfect justification for my next move. I snapped into performance mode, shrieking into the phone. "What? The ventilation is broken? Oh my God, the air in the car. It must be awful. Alex and that woman. Will they run out of air?" Mr. Henderson's voice was shaking. "That's what we're afraid of." After I hung up, I sprinted over to Sergeant Davis, my face a mask of terror. "Sergeant, there's a huge problem. Building management just called. The garage's whole ventilation system is out. All of Section B has no air circulation. Alex is trapped, and now he's running out of oxygen. It's so hot in there. Are they going to suffocate?" My words hit the tense crowd like a grenade. "What? Ventilation failure?" Sergeant Davis's face went white. An underground garage losing air circulation is a nightmare scenario. If it's down for too long, you don't just get stale air, you get a buildup of carbon monoxide. He started barking orders. Get facilities and the fire department on the phone now. I want that system back online at all costs. And get Mount Sinai on the line. Tell them to prep a hyperbaric chamber and a heat stroke trauma team. Move. Sergeant Davis's commands instantly turned the garage into a war zone. Cops, building staff, and soon firefighters swarmed the area, a massive, tense rescue team moving with frantic purpose. The fire department brought heavier breaching tools, while a facilities crew started tearing into the ventilation control panel. I was pulled aside behind the police tape for a formal statement. It was inevitable. I played my part, calmly repeating the story I had rehearsed in my head 100 times. I stressed my total ignorance of the car's tech, suggesting Alex had set some kind of timer himself or that the app was just buggy. The officer took my statement, but the look in his eyes told me he wasn't buying it completely. A wife this calm while her husband was trapped? A wife who just happened to know about a remote locking feature? It was suspicious, but he had nothing. No evidence. Just a feeling. Time crawled by. I snuck a peek at my phone's monitoring app. My little piece of psychological warfare about the ventilation hadn't actually changed the temperature, but it had stayed at a steady 105 degrees for almost 20 minutes. I knew their condition had to be critical by now. They'd be deep into heat stroke, fever, confusion, the inability to sweat. That's when a shout came from the firefighters. An old-timer, an experienced captain, had found something everyone else missed while inspecting the car. The Porsche's sunroof, while electric, had a manual emergency release handle hidden in the ceiling. It was a tiny, obscure design feature you'd only know about if you knew the car inside and out. "I've got it! There's an escape latch!" The veteran's voice cut through the tension, giving everyone a jolt of hope. But there was another problem. The sunroof was closed and my lockdown had killed the electronics. To get to the handle inside, they had to go through the glass first. "I'll take it," the biggest firefighter there said, stepping forward with a specialized rescue axe. He aimed for a corner of the sunroof and swung with everything he had. With a sickening crunch, the reinforced glass shattered, leaving a jagged hole. The firefighter, not even flinching at the risk of getting sliced open, shoved his arm through the opening. He rooted around blindly inside the car's headliner, going on pure instinct. We all just watched, holding our breath. The seconds stretched on. Finally, his arm stopped. We heard a grunt, a sharp pulse. There was a soft click as the mechanical lock disengaged. "It's open!" the firefighter yelled. He pushed the shattered sunroof back. "Inside, can you hear me? Fire department, we're opening the roof. Try to cooperate." The car was eerily silent. For a second, I thought maybe it was over, that they'd already passed out. Then Alex's body shifted in the driver's seat. He tried to lift his head, but it was a weak, pathetic movement. A moment later, a faint moan came from the passenger side. From Chloe. "Help, so hot. Can't breathe." They were alive. And at that sound, my mother-in-law let out a raw animal shriek of pure relief. Her knees buckled and she just collapsed onto the concrete floor. A quiet ripple of relief went through the crowd of onlookers. Seeing they were alive, the firefighters worked fast, using their tools to pry the entire sunroof frame off its tracks. Finally, the captain yelled, "Everybody back! Get ready to receive the patients." With a grunt, he heaved the heavy glass panel off the car and onto the ground. Cool, fresh garage air finally flooded into the oven-like car. 2 firefighters climbed in. The first thing they saw was Alex, slumped over the wheel, his face a horrifying shade of crimson, his lips cracked and dry, completely unconscious. And Chloe was no better. She was curled in on herself in the passenger seat, soaked in sweat, shivering and moaning, her eyes rolling back in her head. "Stretchers now! Let's get them prepped for first aid!" the lead paramedic yelled, rushing forward. The firefighters carefully maneuvered Alex and Chloe out of the car, laying them onto the waiting gurneys. As a medic unbuttoned Alex's shirt to place defibrillator pads, everyone around gasped. His chest was a deep, angry red, and his skin looked blistered, radiating a terrifying heat. "Severe heat stroke. Get him to Mount Sinai now. We need emergency treatment," the doctor on scene diagnosed grimly. A moment later, an ambulance, sirens already screaming, backed into the garage. They wheeled Alex and Chloe out on separate gurneys. Just before they loaded him into the ambulance, I saw a flicker of consciousness return. He struggled to open his eyes, his gaze darting wildly through the crowd until it landed on me. The look he gave me was pure poison, a visceral mix of hatred, fury, and utter disbelief. His lips moved, trying to form words, but nothing came out. The paramedics shoved the gurney inside and slammed the doors, severing our connection. As the ambulance screamed away, a collective sigh of relief rippled through the onlookers. The police started taping off the area, and building maintenance was already fiddling with the garage vents. My mother-in-law, Margaret, was leaning heavily on a cousin as they led her away to sit down. As a concerned family member and the one who reported it, I was required to stay and give my statement. I stood there, alone, next to his empty parking spot in Section B, staring at the Porsche, its sunroof shattered and ugly. A slow, private smile crept across my face. Round 1 was a resounding success, a flawlessly executed accident. I'd taken my husband and his proudest conquest and made them a citywide joke. I made him feel that terrifying free fall from the top of the world to the bottom of the gutter, the sheer panic of death and public shame. Most importantly, I showed him that his self-proclaimed power was a cheap illusion when faced with mine. But it wasn't nearly enough. This was just a crack in his armor. I was going to dismantle everything that made him who he was. His reputation, his career, the family that enabled him, and that nauseating superiority complex. The police investigation, Margaret's fury, the frantic work of the ER doctors, all of it was just beginning. Every one of these events was a thread in the massive web I was weaving. The war had just started, and this little scene in the garage was only the opening skirmish. I had already set every trap. Now, I just had to wait for my prey to step in. I pulled out my phone, wiping the call logs and any related app data, then dialed Alex's secretary, slipping into character. My voice was thick with fake tears. "Can you please find out what hospital they took Alex to? I need to get there now." From the other end, her voice was a flurry of urgency. "Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Hayes is at Mount Sinai. He's in emergency surgery right now. The doctor said it's extremely critical." "Okay," I said, "I'm on my way." After hanging up, I took a long, steadying breath. The smile was gone, replaced by something colder, harder. The game was moving into its second phase. The air in the Mount Sinai emergency room waiting area was thick and sterile, heavy with the smell of antiseptic and anxiety. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a harsh, unforgiving glare on everything. When I walked in, Margaret and a few of Alex's cousins were already there, their faces grim and their eyes puffy. The second she saw me, her grief morphed into pure rage. She launched herself at me like a cornered animal, claws out, aiming for my hair. You're a curse. If my son dies, I swear I will end you," she shrieked, spit flying from her mouth. I saw it coming a mile away and sidestepped her easily. The relatives rushed to grab her. "Margaret, stop it. Alex is still in surgery. You need to calm down." "Calm down? How can I be calm? Amelia did this to my son," she screamed, her whole body shaking as she pointed a trembling finger at my face. "Even the cops said it was a malfunction with that car's remote system." "Who else could it be but you?" she raved. "You were jealous of his success, jealous of everything." Her logic was a mess, but it was exactly what I expected from them. In their small minds, a wife was a passive creature. The only plausible explanation was a freak accident, or that I was some hysterical woman driven mad by jealousy. I didn't say a word, just stood there and took it. The accusations, the hate-filled glares. I let my face settle into a mask of shock and grief, the perfect picture of an innocent wife caught in a nightmare. It worked. Their focus shifted from me back to the glowing red light over the operating room door. The minutes stretched into an eternity. That operating room door remained shut, the light above it a silent, judgmental eye, holding us all in suspense. After what felt like a lifetime but was probably closer to 2 hours, the door swung open. A doctor in scrubs walked out, pulling down his mask. He looked exhausted but not panicked. "Doctor, my son? How is he?" Margaret scrambled forward, her voice cracking. The doctor cleared his throat. "The patient is stable for now," he said. "You got him here in the nick of time. Another 10 or 15 minutes and this would be a very different conversation. It was a severe heat stroke, leading to dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, and damage to multiple organs. We performed rapid cooling, pushed fluids, and worked to correct the imbalances," he continued. "His vitals have stabilized, but he remains unconscious. He'll need to be admitted for observation." "He's out of danger," Margaret sobbed, relief washing over her. "Oh, thank God! Thank God!" She practically collapsed, her legs giving out as her relatives held her up. A quiet wave of relief went through the group. I hung back, listening, feeling a cool satisfaction settle in my chest. My plan had worked perfectly. I didn't want him dead. I just wanted him to experience a little piece of hell. I wanted him to pay for his betrayal in a way he would never, ever forget. He was alive, but the memory of being slowly cooked in his own luxury car, too weak to even scream, would be a scar that never faded. One of the cousins finally spoke up. And what about my daughter-in-law? She meant Chloe, of course. Even though there was no ring, in their eyes, she was already the other woman, the homewrecker. When her name was mentioned, the doctor's expression soured. He shook his head slowly. "The young woman's condition is more complicated," he said, his tone shifting to something between pity and disapproval. "She also presented with severe heat stroke," he explained, "but we found traces of hallucinogenic substances in her system. During gastric lavage, we detected small amounts of ketamine and ecstasy. We don't know where she got them, but they undoubtedly made her condition far worse. There's some damage to her nervous system. She may have memory loss or cognitive issues when she wakes up. We've also had to report this to the police narcotics unit." The word drugs hit the hallway like a grenade. Alex having an affair was a messy family drama. Chloe being a drug user was a crime. All the color drained from Margaret's face. She stared toward the operating room, her mouth opening and closing, but no words coming out. The sweet, innocent girl she'd imagined was a drug addict. Her precious son had been trapped in a car with a drug addict. The room started to spin and she nearly fainted again. The relatives erupted in hushed, scandalized whispers. The way they looked at the situation changed in an instant. It wasn't just sympathy anymore. It was judgment and even a little bit of morbid glee. Alex was no longer just a victim. He was a fool who got mixed up with the wrong kind of girl. His pristine image was already shattering. I watched the chaos unfold with a quiet internal victory lap. This was a bonus I hadn't even planned for. All I wanted was to give them a taste of suffering. I never imagined that idiot Chloe would be high out of her mind. It was a gift. She didn't just ruin herself. She had permanently branded Alex as the man who cheats with junkies. Right on cue, 2 police officers arrived to follow up on the drug report. It was Sergeant Davis again. He flashed his badge and made a beeline for me. "Ms. Hayes, we're going to need a more detailed statement from you now." "Of course, Sergeant," I said, my face a perfect portrait of weary cooperation. He led me to an empty consultation room. Sergeant Davis had me recount the entire night, asking about every single detail, how I found them, who I called, the exact words Alex had used on the phone. I spun my well-rehearsed tale, painting myself as the worried wife who stumbled onto a horrifying scene and got tangled up in something far beyond her control. He listened intently, nodding, but his questions were sharp. "How did you know Mr. Hayes' car could be controlled remotely?" "He bragged about it all the time, Sergeant," I said with a sad little laugh. "Told me all high-end cars had it now. Remote start, remote AC. He said it was for security. I told him he was being paranoid. And what was your husband's state of mind recently? Anything out of the ordinary? He's been so stressed with work, I sighed, looking down at my hands. Working late, always on edge. We haven't been communicating well, I'll admit. I let my voice trail off. I just figured we were in a rough patch. I never imagined. When you got Mr. Hayes' call for help, he pressed, why didn't you dial 911 immediately? Why confront him first? This was the pivot point, the question I knew could trip me up. I was ready for it. I looked up, letting fresh tears well in my eyes. Sergeant, I whispered, my voice breaking. I wasn't thinking straight. I was just so scared. It felt like a dream, the kind where you can't scream. My brain just shut down. I wanted to shake him, to yell, "What are you doing?" But nothing came out. Part of me prayed it was a sick joke, that someone was making him do this. I was terrified. Calling the cops felt like signing the death certificate for our family. I know it was a stupid, terrible choice. But God, I wasn't trying to be malicious. I love him so much, and I love this life we built. That performance was my masterpiece, playing on every stereotype of the scorned wife. The fear, the love, the panic, the sheer stupidity, it all blended into a story they had to believe. Sergeant Davis just stared, trying to find a crack in the facade. In the end, he just sighed, typing into his report. Erratic behavior due to emotional trauma. No apparent criminal motive. That was my cue. Miss Hayes, we're done for today. We'll be looking into the car's remote system failure and Miss Miller's drug situation. Until we have more, please stay in the city and keep your phone on. Of course. Thank you, Sergeant. Walking out of that precinct, I felt lighter than I had in years. The stress of the interrogation was a small price for my official innocence. They'd never find a shred of proof, because there was none to find. To them, I'll just be the dumb wife who accidentally fried the car's electronics in a blind panic. It was the perfect cover. Next up, winning the war of public opinion. I skipped going home and found a 24-hour coffee shop downtown. On one of their public computers, I logged into a series of burner accounts for local forums and social media. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I began to meticulously craft the narrative. Breaking. Partner at a top NYC architecture firm in late-night garage tryst. Car fire possibly sparked by adult toy malfunction. Couple trapped. Exclusive. Porsche driving architect linked to colleague's drug use. Narcotics found in her system after his wife's quick-thinking 911 call. Deep dive. The double life of architectural golden boy Alex Vance. By day, a gentleman designer. By night, a connoisseur of high-risk affairs and drugs. I used a string of new, untraceable accounts. The posts were a masterclass in twisting the truth, framing the car fire as a sordid accident, and implying Alex was complicit in Chloe's drug use. I added a grainy, long-lens shot of Alex and Chloe being helped from the hospital, plus a photo of the Porsche with its sunroof blown out. The posts hit the internet like grenades. The keywords were irresistible. Prestigious firm, partner, Porsche, sexcapade, drugs. It was pure, viral gold. People eat this stuff up. An elite crashing down to earth. They don't want the truth. They want the drama. Within hours, the posts were everywhere, shared and commented on thousands of times. Hashtags like number Porsche Tryst and number architect Alex were trending across the city. The internet was buzzing with rumors, insults, and mockery. OMG, who is this guy? This is wild. Found him. Alex Vance, partner at HRT Architects. Always seems so normal, LOL. Dude gets hospitalized in a sex accident with a cokehead. His poor wife. A scumbag like that needs to be canceled. Permanently. Y'all are missing it. I bet the wife planned the whole thing. She's a queen. They didn't know it, but public opinion was bending exactly to my will. Most people, with zero context, would rush to condemn Alex from their moral high ground, and my own image was slowly shifting from the fool to the avenging angel, the long-suffering wife who finally, brilliantly, took out the trash. Once it was done, I wiped my digital footprint clean and walked out of the cafe. The sky was just starting to turn a bruised purple over the East River. I didn't head home. Instead, I sat in a Starbucks, ordered a cappuccino, and watched the city come to life. My plan was unfolding, piece by perfect piece. Bye. The police hold would keep Alex tied down. Chloe's drug charges were a fatal blow to his credibility, and the online narrative was pushing him right off the cliff. His career, his reputation, his entire life. It was all collapsing in spectacular fashion. I knew exactly the hell that awaited him when he finally woke up. His partners would call an emergency meeting. His clients would start pulling their accounts, questioning his judgment. The firm's stock might even dip, and his parents, my in-laws, would be unable to show their faces at the country club after the scandal with him, and that homewrecker broke. And our son, Ethan, would one day hear the whispers about his father's spectacular disgrace. Everything Alex had ever built, I was going to burn to the ground. He would be left like a fish, scaled and gutted, gasping for air under the relentless stare of the public. I took a slow sip of my coffee. A cold smile touched my lips. This was only the beginning. Next, I had to deal with the enemy in my own home, my mother-in-law. She was my next target. I was going to make her watch as I systematically destroyed her precious son. I would force her to see that the perfect man she'd protected his whole life was a monster from the start. I finished my coffee and stood up. The morning sun hit my face, but it did nothing to warm the ice in my veins. I pulled out my phone and dialed Ethan's preschool. Using my cheeriest voice, I said, "Hi, this is Ethan's mom. He's going to take a personal day today. I thought I'd take him to the park. Thanks so much." I hung up and took a steadying breath. The war had reached my front door, and I was about to deliver the killing blow with the sweetest smile. 4 days later, Alex woke up. The news trickled down to me from his secretary through my mother-in-law. The first person he asked for, apparently, was me. The secretary sounded terrified, stammering that Mr. Vance is not stable. Ranting 1 minute, crying the next, cursing my name, then begging me to come to the hospital. I felt nothing. Visit him. For what? To feel powerful watching him lie there, broken? No. The only reason I'd ever go back there is to slap a signed divorce petition on his chest. And the timing wasn't right yet. The first course of my revenge banquet had just been served. The main dish and dessert still needed to be prepared with care. So I didn't go to the hospital. I went to Ethan's school and told his teacher he'd be home with me for a few days. I would be personally overseeing his care. The teacher looked confused, but my tone left no room for argument. When I got Ethan home, I didn't dive into my usual storm of work calls. I sat on the floor with him, building a city out of Legos. He was thrilled. He thought Mom was finally done with late nights at the office. He giggled, handing me a blue block. "Look, Mommy, this is our house." Looking at his perfect, innocent smile, a tiny piece of my frozen heart started to thaw. I pulled him into a hug and whispered, "That's right, baby. This is our house, and Mommy is going to protect it, and you always." My voice was soft, but every word was an oath. That afternoon, my mother-in-law showed up. Unannounced, of course. She used her own key. Her face was a storm of exhaustion, anger, and resentment. She'd been camped out at a hotel nearby playing nurse to her son, and I'm sure spying on me. "Amelia, get out here," she barked from the foyer. I walked Ethan out of his room, a pleasant, placid smile fixed on my face. "Margaret, you're here. Please, sit down. Ethan, say hi to Grandma." Ethan mumbled a hello, but my mother-in-law's eyes were locked on me like lasers. "Don't you call me that. I don't have a daughter-in-law like you. My son is lying in a hospital bed and you haven't even bothered to show your face once. Are you even human? You're mistaken, Margaret," I said, my voice smooth as glass. "Alex is still under observation in the ICU. The doctor said absolutely no visitors. Even if I went, they wouldn't let me in. I figured it was better to stay home with Ethan so Alex wouldn't have one more thing to worry about. Don't give me that." She was flustered for a second, then her anger surged back. "Stop with the saint act. I know what you're doing. You're using this to ruin my son's name so you can divorce him and take every penny he has. How could you say that? I put on my best wounded expression, letting my eyes well up just a little. Alex is my husband. Ethan is our son. This family is everything to me. All I want is for Alex to get better. Divorce? The thought has never crossed my mind. The words were part truth, part lie. I wouldn't be the one to file. I was going to make him crawl to me, begging for a divorce and leave with nothing but the clothes on his back. Good. See that it stays that way. My mother-in-law scrutinized my face, searching for any hint of deceit. She found nothing. My performance was flawless. I was the perfect image of a devoted wife, betrayed and heartbroken, but still trying to do the right thing for her family. Humph, I certainly hope so. She scoffed, her anger dimming as she sat. Alex is lucky to be alive. If not, I'd have your hide. Please, Margaret. I gave her some water. What happened? It was an accident. We need to think about our role in this. Were we ignoring him? Was the pressure too much? I sounded guilty, but it was a calculated jab at her. Your son's mess is partly your fault. You only nagged him and attacked me. Did you ever really care how he felt? Right on cue, her expression soured. She lifted the glass, then slammed it down, untouched. How could we be neglectful? We gave him everything. If it wasn't for a wife like you. Let's not rehash the past, I cut her off. The priority is Alex's recovery. The internet is a disaster for him, for his company's reputation. It's a huge problem. We have to get ahead of this, manage the damage. Mentioning his business made her frown again. She didn't get the details, but she understood disgrace. What do we do? The cops are involved, and that homewrecker. The police think she uses drugs. If that's true, our family's reputation is destroyed. Exactly, which is why we need to control the narrative. I sat beside her, my voice low and earnest. Margaret, online, people are savaging Alex, but some are defending us. They think we were set up. We can't just absorb these hits. We have to shape the story. How? She asked, taking the bait. First, a united front. I held up a single finger. Whatever the police ask, we say it was a remote control car malfunction. It's the best story for us. And Chloe Miller, her drug problem is her own. Alex's PR team needs to release a statement now. Clarify he knew nothing about her personal life, and it's separate from the company. We paint Alex as the victim here. I'd planned every word. This strategy would shield Alex, isolate him from Chloe, and pivot the whole story. The focus becomes a faulty car and a rogue employee. She only half followed but got the main point. So, we blame her and the car? Pretty much. I nodded. Second, we leverage public opinion. I pulled out my phone, showing her some posts I'd already seeded. See, Margaret? People feel sorry for us. They think we're going through hell. We can hire influencers, a crisis PR firm, to spin this. Wife's courage saves husband, or cheating couple gets what they deserve. We make the truth impossible to find. All anyone will remember is our version. She stared at the screen, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. She didn't get social media, but she understood manipulation. She knew a good story could win sympathy and deflect blame. Won't that cost money? She finally asked. A little, but it's a necessary investment, I replied. We can use our joint savings. This is a crisis. We have to spend what it takes. Offering our money sealed the deal. It made me look like the devoted daughter-in-law sacrificing for the family. In the end, Margaret was sold. She didn't grasp my real goal, but she knew my plan was the only lifeline she had. She agreed. Okay, Amelia, we'll do it your way. I'll speak with his company. Thanks for everything, Margaret. I helped her to her feet. You look exhausted. Go rest. I've got this. The second she was gone, my smile vanished. I glanced at Ethan, building with his blocks. My expression turned to ice. I'd won the battle with my mother-in-law. I saw right through her and used her love for her son to turn her into my pawn. She thinks she's fighting back, but she's just acting out my script, pushing Alex deeper into the hole I dug for him. I didn't want a partner. I needed a disposable tool to create chaos, and Margaret was perfect for the job. Over the next few days, Alex's company issued a statement, just as I'd planned. It claimed total ignorance of Chloe's criminal activities, separating them completely. The company promised full cooperation with the police and expressed deep sympathy for Alex's trauma. Meanwhile, Margaret and I worked our contacts, feeding our narrative to the media and reputation managers, working to shift the tide. Suddenly, a new narrative appeared online. Don't be fooled, Mr. Vance is a victim too. That woman is an addict. He was probably tricked. And his wife is incredible, handling this with such grace. Public opinion, just as I predicted, started to fracture. The truth was buried under layers of cash and carefully crafted lies. This was the exact chaos I wanted. I needed Alex trapped in a never-ending cycle of damage control. He'd have to deal with cops, investors, clients, the press, and his family. He would be completely overwhelmed, exhausted, and while he scrambled to save himself, he would lose every last shred of his dignity. I was the director, watching from the wings, feeding lines to my actors to ensure the tragedy unfolded exactly as I'd written it. That evening, Alex's secretary called, sounding frantic. Mrs. Vance, Mr. Vance needs to see you. He's emotionally unstable, refusing treatment until he speaks with you. A cold smile touched my lips. So, he finally broke. Is this a plea or a threat? Tell him I want to see him too, I said calmly. Once he's in a regular room and more stable. But Mrs. Vance, the doctor says he needs calm and he's only asking for you. Then have the doctor sedate him, I replied, my voice flat. He's a grown man who needs to face the consequences of his actions. What he needs is rest, not a tantrum. With that, I hung up. My refusal, I knew, would shatter his last bit of hope. He thought he could leverage our history against me. He was wrong. The Amelia he knew died in that garage. I'm what's left, a creature he woke up, and I live for one thing now, revenge. My phone buzzed with a text from a nurse's station number. It was Alex. Amelia, you are pure evil. You won't get away with this. I laughed and typed back, Alex, the game is just starting. You better hope you make it to the final round. I sent it, then deleted the entire exchange. I went to Ethan's room, kissed his forehead, and whispered, Sleep tight, baby. Mommy will protect you. I'll handle everything. The night was dark, but I know the dark is deepest just before the dawn, and I was ready. My plan was moving into its final phase, dismantling his entire world, and I was holding the blade. Alex was out of the hospital. Margaret called to tell me. He lasted less than 10 days before being discharged to recuperate at our penthouse apartment. Recuperation was a nice word for house arrest. After the initial PR disaster and the stock dive, his business partners had lost all faith in him. A partner with a messy personal life and a potential link to a drug scandal wasn't an asset. He was a liability. Alex's recuperation was just a quiet way of stripping him of all power. All he could do was sit in that huge, empty apartment, staring at the city, and get used to the feeling of his world crashing down. The day after Alex came home, I walked into his company's lobby. No appointment, no warning. I just appeared at the HR reception desk. The woman there did a poor job of hiding her surprise before plastering on a professional, vaguely sympathetic smile. I knew the office Slack channels had been buzzing for days about the chairman's wife finally showing up. Can I help you? She asked, her voice a little too soft. I need to see your head of legal and your head of PR, I said, my tone level. It was the same voice I used to run boardrooms, an authority I'd spent my entire career building. My arrival was a shockwave. I knew word was already flying upstairs to the C-suite and to Mr. Davis in legal and Ms. Miller in PR. They both arrived at reception almost in unison, their faces a careful blend of concern and calculation. Mr. Davis, a meticulous man in his mid-50s, adjusted his glasses and spoke first. Mrs. Hayes, hello, I'm Mark Davis from Legal. In regard to Alex's situation, I want to assure you the company is handling the follow-up with the utmost seriousness. Mark, you don't need to be so formal, I replied with a tight smile. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here representing Alex and myself to discuss the plan for moving forward. A plan? Ms. Miller, a sharp woman in her late 30s, immediately picked up on the weight of my words and pressed for more. What kind of plan? Simple, I said directly. Alex co-founded this company. He poured his life into it. While he's had a personal incident, that shouldn't erase his rights as a shareholder or his position. I feel the steps the company has taken are unfair. My words made both their faces go rigid. Davis and Miller were clearly not expecting this. They wanted a grieving housewife, not a business negotiation. Mrs. Hayes, to be blunt, Mr. Davis frowned, Alex's personal conduct has caused severe damage to our brand image and our reputation. The partnership agreement gives us every right to suspend his duties while we conduct an internal investigation. This isn't a personal attack, it's about the company's future. I understand, I nodded, calmly pulling a document from my tote bag. I placed it gently on the desk. This is a letter of intent for a share transfer. I'm proposing Alex transfers the 30% of the company he owns to the other partners at a price well below market value. In return, I continued, the company will release an official statement to restore Alex's reputation and pay him a substantial sum for emotional distress and rehabilitation. Furthermore, he will retain a position as an honorary director to ensure his basic living. This document was a trap I'd spent 3 days with a top corporate lawyer designing, targeting every loophole in their internal structure. My proposal sounded like I was fighting for Alex, but it was a poisoned chalice. First, that 30% stake was the source of all his power. Once it was gone, he'd be nothing more than a ghost in the company he built. Second, the lowball price would instantly erase tens of millions of dollars from his net worth. Third, that so-called compensation package, while sounding generous, was a rounding error compared to the value of his lost shares. And finally, the honorary title was designed to nail him to a public pillar of shame, forcing him to watch as others used the fortune he'd bled for to clean up his own mess. Davis and Miller glanced at each other, utterly shocked by my play. They had prepared for an emotional appeal, not this cold-blooded corporate maneuvering. My methods were clearly beyond anything they had imagined. Mrs. Hayes, this proposal is incredibly harsh, Ms. Miller finally said. The company has already absorbed a massive loss from this. We can't accept these terms. Is that right? I smiled, leaning forward and lowering my voice. Let's be honest with each other. You two know the reality of Alex's situation better than I do. What value does he have left? Can his health even sustain high-pressure work anymore? His personal brand is bankrupt. Who would trust him with a project now? His presence here isn't an asset, it's a burden. He's a ticking time bomb. Rather than let him drag you all down into a bigger crisis, isn't it better to cut the cord now? Achieve maximum stability for minimum cost. I paused, my gaze hardening. And do you really think the police investigation into Chloe's drug situation is just going to quietly disappear? What if something else surfaces? Say, some quid pro quo between her and Alex, or maybe she has other information that could be very damaging to this company. It was a naked threat. I was weaponizing their fear of a scandal with no end. Chloe's arrest was just the beginning, and nobody knew what other secrets were buried. If they didn't take my deal, I was perfectly willing to start digging. Beads of sweat formed on their foreheads. They knew every word I said could become a headline. The woman they were facing was no longer an opponent they could manage. The meeting dragged on from morning into the afternoon. In the end, crushed by the psychological warfare and my relentless calculations of their self-interest, they had no choice but to cave. We settled on a preliminary agreement. Alex would transfer 15% of his shares. I allowed a small concession. The company would pay the compensation and grant him the lifetime honorary director title. The legal team would draft the specifics. As I left the building, I looked up at the sky and took a long, deep breath. The sun felt warm. I had won. I hadn't just squeezed every last drop of economic value out of Alex. I had completely ejected him from the empire he had built with his own 2 hands. He was left with nothing but a sterile penthouse and a dwindling bank account. And I did it all under the guise of protecting him. I had once again used greed and fear as a weapon to deliver a fatal blow. When I arrived home, my mother-in-law, Margaret, was fussing in the kitchen. She flashed a sycophantic smile. "Amelia, you're back. How did it go today?" "It's handled, Margaret," I said calmly. "We reached a basic agreement. The company has agreed to do right by Alex." "Oh, that's wonderful, just wonderful," she sighed with visible relief. But then her face clouded over again. "But his shares will be so much smaller, and the money, he's not going to like that." "Don't you worry about that, Margaret." I moved to her side, patting her shoulder gently. "Money comes and goes. Health and safety are what's most important. Alex needs to recover now, and he needs his family's care. As his wife and his mother, it's our job to support him through this." My words were a pitch-perfect performance of sincerity. My mother-in-law was so moved, her eyes turned red. She grabbed my hand. "Amelia, you are so wise. I'm just so beside myself. From now on, whatever you think is best for the family, I'll support it." I smiled warmly at her, but inside I sneered. The fish jumped right into the boat. In the days that followed, I threw myself into the role of the devoted, resilient wife. I visited Alex's penthouse every single day, bringing him food, talking to him, comforting him. Of course, my idea of comfort was to endlessly recount the ways he had wronged me and how shattered I was. I also curated my public image as the wife who stood by her man. I even gave an exclusive interview to a major outlet, tearfully telling my story and solidifying my image as a tolerant, graceful, and powerful woman. The interview earned me universal acclaim. I was championed as a model for the modern woman, someone who, when betrayed, didn't just break down, but used her wisdom to protect her family's interests. My online following skyrocketed. I started getting speaking invitations from women's empowerment organizations. And Alex, in this elaborate theater I'd constructed, was completely sidelined. He was no longer a person. He was a symbol to be pitied and saved. In the public's eyes, his pain, his struggles, his anger, it was all just part of his penance. He became a pathetic joke, a fallen man graciously forgiven by his incredible wife. His spirit was ground down day by day, and he slid steadily toward a complete breakdown. The drinking started, then the insomnia. He would just sit on his balcony all night, smoking, his eyes hollow as he stared at nothing. Everything he had ever been proud of, his mind, his position, his wealth, his charm, I was systematically turning it all to ash. He was like a magnificent eagle that had been plucked bare, left unable to fly, only to gasp on the ground. That day, I went to the penthouse for my usual visit. He was just a slump on the sofa, all his former magnetism gone. When he saw me, a faint light flickered in his dead eyes for the first time, but it was a light full of poison. "What are you doing here again?" His voice was like sandpaper. "I came to see you, Alex." I ladled soup from a thermos and brought the spoon toward his lips, my motion as gentle as water. "The doctor says you need to keep your nutrition up." Alex didn't move. He just stared at me like he wanted to devour me whole. After what felt like an eternity, he managed to grind out a few words. "Amelia, you must be loving this. Why would I love this?" I kept my smile in place, inching the spoon closer. "I'm doing this for us, Alex, because I love you, because we have Ethan. I refuse to let our years together just be thrown away like trash. You love me." Alex suddenly erupted in this awful, broken laughter that was more tragic than anything. "You love me. You can stand there and say that after what you've done, after putting me in this state? Amelia, You are the most two-faced, vicious woman on this planet. Think whatever you need to. I set the soup bowl down and wiped my hands. I pulled a folder from my bag and set it on the coffee table. Alex, sign this while you can still think straight. His eyes flickered to the folder. The moment he read the title, the color drained from his face. Divorce settlement. You want to divorce me? He stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. Yes, I said, my voice perfectly level. There's nothing left between us, Alex. It's better to make a clean break than to keep torturing each other. I've laid it all out. You get the house, you get the car. All I want is Ethan. We'll split the rest of our assets down the middle. Of course, considering your health right now, I'm prepared to walk away from most of it, taking only what belongs to me and our son. The terms sounded generous, but I knew they were just another shove toward the edge of a cliff. The house and car were the only things he had left. A divorce would brand him a failure, the guy whose wife left him. What's the point of a big empty house and a fancy car when you're all alone? And splitting assets was the biggest joke of all. What assets did he even have left to split? In your dreams, Amelia. Alex, roaring like a wounded animal, swiped the papers onto the floor. I'm not divorcing you. Not until the day I die. If you say so. I calmly bent down, picked up the settlement, and put it back in my bag. But Alex, I said quietly, you don't have a lot of time to think this over. And your girlfriend, ex-girlfriend Chloe, her trial is next week. If she decides to share all the fun little details about your time together to get a lighter sentence, we'll be talking about more than just a divorce. You could be on the hook for providing a place for drug use, maybe even worse. With that, I walked out of the penthouse without a backward glance. As the door clicked shut, I heard a violent crash from inside, the sound of something shattering to pieces. A small, satisfied smile touched my lips. Your pride, Alex. Your career, your family, your entire world. I'd already burned it to the ground. Now, I was about to cut my own last tie to the wreckage. This joke of a marriage. I would leave you a ghost, with nothing and no one, to rot in your regret. My revenge was closing in on its perfect finale. Chloe Miller's drug trial was like a final judgment, and it stripped Alex of his last shred of credibility. In court, Chloe's role was seen as minor, and because she cooperated, she got 2 years, suspended for 3, for naming her supplier. The verdict gave her a legal second chance, but the court of public opinion was another story. One reporter wouldn't let up, pressing her about Alex. Whether she was trying to save herself or was just at her breaking point, Chloe vaguely admitted they were together, and then she let it slip. Alex seemed to be on some kind of stimulant that night. That little tidbit was like gasoline on a fire. The internet exploded. What? Alex was doing drugs too? This guy really hit for the cycle. The affair, the drugs, now stimulants? He's got the whole collection. I thought he was supposed to be the victim here. Looks more like he was the one corrupting her. His wife is a damn saint. A scumbag like that needs to be publicly dragged. Any stray comments online defending Alex were completely buried under a new avalanche of mockery and outrage. Alex's entire image shattered, going from a wronged architecture mogul to a law-breaking degenerate who cheated, did drugs, and abused substances. His name became a running joke in our social circle. His firm, battered by the constant negative press, watched its stock price completely tank. Major projects were put on ice indefinitely. The company was gutted, forced into massive layoffs and a total restructuring just to survive. Alex's remaining 15% stake was now worthless paper. He hadn't just lost his company. The compensation agreements he'd signed before all this meant he was now drowning in debt. His life was obliterated, and it all happened within 3 days of me leaving that divorce agreement with him. I took the newly signed papers and went to his penthouse one last time. I didn't bother calling. I just used the spare key I'd had made months ago, back when his mother asked me to handle their family affairs. The place was a disaster. The curtains were drawn and the air was thick and stale. Alex was just a shape curled on the sofa, a ghost in his own home. The reek of stale booze and cigarettes hit me from the doorway. He looked skeletal, his eyes hollowed out, and his hair was shot through with gray. He looked 10 years older. When the door opened, he slowly lifted his head. For a split second, a pathetic flicker of hope lit his eyes before it was snuffed out by an even deeper despair. "What do you want now?" His voice was a raw, broken rasp. "Just dropping off a document and picking up my things." I placed the finalized divorce papers on the table. He stared at the new agreement like it was a venomous snake. He tried to stand, but his limbs were numb from sitting, and he just crumpled to the floor. I didn't move to help him. I just stood over him, looking down at him like he was a piece of trash on the sidewalk. "Sign it, Alex." My voice was as casual as if I were talking about the weather. "Legally, we're done. You're free." "Free?" He was sprawled on the floor and he started to laugh. This wild, unhinged sound. "I'm free? I have nothing. My company, my money, my reputation, my home. I have nothing left. Amelia, are you happy now? Are you satisfied now that you've destroyed my entire life?" "It's not about satisfaction," I said coolly. "It's about getting back what was mine. 7 years of my life, Alex. I gave you my youth, my heart, everything a woman has to give. And what did I get back? Lies. Betrayal. You treated me like I was a fool. Alex, be honest with yourself for 1 second. Did you ever deserve what I gave you? I... He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "You know," I went on, my voice detached, "when I saw you with her in the car that night, a part of me wanted to tear you both apart right there. But I stopped myself, because that would have been too easy. I wanted you to pay for what you did 100, 1,000 times over. I wanted you to fall from the absolute peak to the deepest pit of hell. I wanted you to lose so much more than you ever thought you had." I walked closer, bent down and stared into his pain-twisted face. I enunciated every single word, and I did it. "You lost, Alex. You lost everything. You thought you were the one in control, but you were never more than a piece on my board, and I was the one playing the game. You crazy. You're a demon." He finally snapped. He lunged at me, trying to get his hands around my throat, but I just took one casual step back, easily avoiding him. His body, completely wrecked, just collapsed back onto the floor. This time, it looked like he didn't have the energy to even try to get up. I straightened my jacket, looking down at the heap he'd become. A cold, sharp smile spread across my face. "The game's over, Alex. You can lie here and rot, or you can try to start over. It doesn't matter to me. You have nothing left to build with anyway. Remember tonight. Remember how you lost it all. This is my last gift to you, from Amelia Hayes." After that, I turned and left the penthouse that had felt like a cage for years. As I shut the door, I shut out his pathetic sobs and curses. Outside, the sun was blindingly bright. I took a deep, clean breath of air. It felt like my whole body was waking up. 7 years. I was finally, truly free. I didn't go straight home. I went to my lawyer's office to file the papers and finalize everything. Next, I went to the bank and moved everything that was mine and Ethan's into a new, secure account under my name only. My last stop was Ethan's preschool. Mommy! He saw me from across the playground and came running, his little arms open wide. I knelt down and pulled him into the tightest hug. Feeling his small, warm body in my arms, the tears finally came. But these weren't tears of grief. They were tears of pure, unfiltered relief. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Ethan's tiny hand wiped my cheek, his voice so innocent. "Mommy's happy, baby," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "Happy because it's just us now, starting over. A new life." The thought of marrying again felt impossible. The one lesson Alex burned into my soul was that marriage isn't some mandatory finish line. A woman's real security isn't a man, it's her own independence, both emotionally and financially. So I took the settlement money, combined it with every cent I had saved, and I started my own boutique design consulting firm. I funneled every contact and lesson from my career into building my own company. Fueled by grit and everything I knew, my agency didn't just get off the ground, it started making serious waves. I left behind that penthouse, that glass box in the sky that was supposed to be our monument to success, and found a cozy 2-bedroom in a neighborhood with actual trees. This new life was about 2 people, me and my son, Ethan. Alex's mother called a few times, pleading with me to help her screw up of a son for Ethan's sake, but I shut that down immediately. I made sure she had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her days, but our connection, and my connection to Alex, was severed completely. I would never let myself forget the damage they did. I stopped keeping tabs on Alex's life. Rumor was he sold the apartment and his car to cover his debts, then disappeared to some small southern town, completely off the grid. Maybe he was actually trying to build a new life from the wreckage he'd made. Perhaps that was the best he could hope for. A year later, I was sitting in my own office, looking down at the blur of city traffic from behind floor-to-ceiling windows. The afternoon sun was spilling across my desk, illuminating a framed drawing from Ethan that had won a school prize. He had drawn our family, but where a father should be, there was a giant tree, and the 2 of us were leaning against it, safe. I picked up my phone and saw a number I'd long since forgotten, Alex's. My thumb hovered for a second before I hit delete. We were on 2 different planets now, with no chance of our orbits ever crossing again. My story had a clean ending. A woman scorned, who used her smarts to get payback on her cheating husband and his girlfriend, and finally built a better life. But life is so much messier than a simple story. Sometimes, late at night after I've tucked Ethan in, I sit alone in my study, and a wave of unease washes over me. I won. I got everything I thought I wanted. But in the process, did I turn into the very kind of person I used to hate? I wove a tapestry of lies. I chose conspiracy over communication, and I hurt the person I once loved in the cruelest way I could imagine. My hands are clean, but it feels like there's invisible blood on them. The thrill of revenge was like a firework, a brilliant explosion that left behind nothing but ringing silence and a deep, questioning void. I tore Alex's world apart, but did I also tear apart the good, kind person I used to be? I got my vengeance, but in doing so, I extinguished the last tiny ember of love that existed between us. I won the whole world, but I think I might have lost my own soul. When those thoughts get too loud, I take a sip of wine from the glass on my desk. The acidic liquid burns its way down my throat. I stare out at the city lights, thinking about how every single one holds a story of love and hate, joy and pain. Maybe there is no real good or evil. Maybe we're all just navigating our own desires and disasters, making the choices that feel right in the moment. I chose revenge, and I live with that. I smile because I won. But in the dead of night, I still ask myself, if I could rewind time to that moment in the garage, hearing those sounds, would I choose a different path? The truth is, I don't know. All I know for sure is that the woman named Amelia Hayes died that night. The person who survived was someone new, forged in fire, but forever carrying the brand of her own hatred. I set my wine glass down and walked over to the window. My reflection in the dark glass no longer showed that cold, triumphant smile from the garage. Instead, I saw a quiet calm, a detachment that only comes from weathering an absolute hurricane. I might have won the battle, but I'm not sure if I've won the war of life. But no matter what, this is my road to walk. I know there are more storms on the horizon, but I'm not scared anymore, because I am walking toward a new beginning with a smile. And this smile isn't about the satisfaction of revenge. It's about a profound respect and a quiet love for life itself.